episode of Winning the Moment, we have Rio Franzman, the COO of Harvey, and he drops some incredible knowledge on environment and energy, and it's unlike any episode we've ever had before. You're going to love it. Stay tuned to the end and find out what a yellow personality is all about. All right, welcome back to another episode of Winning the Moment. I've got a special guest today, Rio Franzman. He is the COO of Harvey. And I'm just so glad that you're in town because I would have asked you to be on either way, but it would have been virtual. So this is nice.
Love it. I'm happy to be here, man. St. George's second home. You know that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever have a home here?
Yeah, hopefully. For sure.
Man,
I'd love to have an office here someday.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
plans,
Let's make that happen.
Yeah.
So you live in Sheridan, Wyoming now.
I do.
And you like that?
Love it. Yeah, Sheridan's paradise, especially if you love the outdoors.
I can't remember in the square of Wyoming, where is Sheridan?
So, Wyoming's big kind of squarish rectangle, 3 bands of mountains that run north-south, basically. We're on the farthest east mountain set, the Bighorn Mountains, all the way at the northern part. So actually, Billings,
so you're not
Montana.
Okay, so then you're even up by the Jackson Hole area, kind of.
No, way different, other side of the state. So Jackson's about 9
Oh,
hours.
right, you said east side.
Yeah.
That's right, okay.
Yeah. So Billings, Montana is actually my closest major city.
Wow, and how far is that?
Hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, that's not bad. But you have an airport in Sheridan?
1 flight a day, buddy.
And so that's what you get in and out of.
Yeah,
you probably know everyone
Denver.
who works there.
Dude, it's awesome, man. You show up 30 minutes before. Just walk in.
Oh,
just go right
man.
on the plane.
The St. George Airport used to be that way, and Meg and I are going to Scottsdale for a weekend, and so we weren't worried about time or whatever. And we showed up like an hour early, and they wouldn't let us on the plane.
It's too early.
I've never been more angry. I was ready to cancel the whole trip.
Like, I'm done. I want out.
I only had 2 days anyway, so it's like there goes half a day. So what brought you to St. George? What are you doing here?
Oh, man, just a little guy's getaway. I've got some buddies that were out of Houston. We came to do some golf and meet up together and then catch up with you and see some buddies and whatnot. So really just a time to relax and kind of collect thoughts and collect myself.
It's a bit of a vacation for you.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the last few years. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's at times you have to stress. You have to de-stress. You got to take care of yourself mentally.
Absolutely.
And I've learned more about that the last probably 2 years of my life than I have anything else.
Do you think you've learned that so much because you have such a demanding position now?
Yeah, for sure. You have to make decisions to take care of yourself, or if you don't, you fail for everybody. Is the issue?
Yeah.
The issue with being the point of the spear is if that tip breaks, the whole thing fails, right?
Absolutely.
And so by taking care of yourself mentally and physically and making sure that you're setting aside time for yourself, it only provides a better opportunity for growth and for everybody else to be successful in the group and the company that we help lead and we help guide.
Yeah, I always say you've got to take care of yourself first, because if you're not the best version of yourself, then you're ultimately impacting the other people.
Got to clean your own house.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your background, because I've talked a lot about not going to school, but you took a different path. You went to school, got into the corporate world. So I'd love you to share a little bit of your backstory, because it's quite awesome.
Sure. Yeah. So stepping back a little bit, I'll go kind of foundational. I'm an only child, born in Tucson, Arizona, and my parents and I
I didn't know that.
Yeah, bounced around all over the place, all over southwestern part of the U.S. And we lived in Arizona, New Mexico, several different places, kind of always chasing the American dream. And when I guess I was like 11 or 12, we moved to St. George. And that's kind of where we ended up growing up and being raised here. Honestly, the corporate life wasn't actually what I intended to do. But I played baseball in high school and got an opportunity to play baseball in college. And when that happened, that kind of forced me into the school life.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think without sports, you would have went to school?
It's weird because I try not to reflect back on think the decisions I did and didn't make.
Yeah.
It's just too time consuming. So
just for the sake of the podcast.
For the sake of the podcast, I don't know. I love learning, so I probably would have, but I'm not a good student though.
Well,
I was never a good student.
That's what I was going to say, because for the audience, we went to high school together and we actually crossed paths a bunch of times in our lives, which is interesting. Like we both ended up living in Houston together, which is so random.
So random.
But I don't remember you being a good student either, because neither was I. In fact, I remember that one day when we took out your Jeep. Was it a CJ5 you had?
Yeah, yellow one.
And we took it and just sat in the shade by the further northern park instead of going to class. So we weren't great students. So it's not like, and I have gotten the ambition for learning in adulthood, but I definitely didn't have it in the traditional way at that time.
Yeah, I just have I have a problem with grades. I have a problem with judgment. I have a problem with you. There's just different people in life, and there's different different types of assessment. And I'm not a person that retains information well. I retain general concepts, but finite details. Like you and I talk about, you'd be like,
Memorization.
you'd be like, hey, remember that time we did this thing on that day? And I'm like, ooh, right. So when you're in school, like I just don't have, and I found that out early. It's like I'm not dumb. I'm just not set up for a lot of success in an academic setting where it talks about regurgitating a lot of facts.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I've kind of always shied away from traditional academics, even though I'm now in a very academic position. I'm surrounded by master's and PhD level people that are unbelievably sophisticated. And so it's a weird dynamic of like that challenge of knowing that I was not a good student, I'm not a good student, but also understanding that I do have a bunch of value to bring in a different sense.
Yeah.
So long story short, I probably would have gone to school. I probably would have struggled just as bad as I did, but I do like learning. So,
yeah.
So stepping back, I got baseball scholarship, which threw me into the kind of the school.
Yeah.
Here's how bad I sucked at it. I failed out the first year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That was at SUU, right?
No, I was at Dixie, and at Utah Tech.
Oh, wow.
And I got kicked off the team. So this is kind of the turning point. This is one of the reasons, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. This is one of the reasons why I left the area. So
all right. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So graduating high school, me and Nick Spilker, you know Nick.
Yeah.
Spread on the cover of the newspaper about him and I getting scholarships.
Both pitchers, right?
Both pitchers, 1, 2, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you know this as an 18-year-old, you cannot be given a larger award in life than being on the spread of a cover of a newspaper talking about how cool you are to be the hometown heroes to go play for your hometown college.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I was not good at handling that at all. And
like the pressure or what?
Just the whole concept of, I thought I already got it. I won. I figured it all out already, guys.
Okay, so you put your successful feather in your hat.
I nailed it.
The work is done. I arrived.
This is it. Life is going to coast from here on out. Are you kidding me? I already got it.
Isn't it funny how when you're so young, because that is like going through high school, that would have been like the milestone you were striving for. And then so you get it and you don't yet have the world knowledge to know like, no, that's actually, you're just starting.
Yeah.
It's not the finish line.
Yeah.
It's the starting line.
And it wasn't just grades. I was also doing other dumb stuff, right? I was out partying. I was staying up too late. I was missing weights. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't taking care of myself mentally. I wasn't becoming a good baseball player anymore. I mean, I started failing on the field. So I was failing in the classroom.
Was that when you guys had that BAD house?
Yeah, that's when we had the house. Yeah. Now it's all making sense, right? That's all making sense. We definitely had a very fun house. That's for sure. And then one day it kind of all came crashing down when my coach called and said, "Hey, you're done. You're off the team." And it was so fast, so finite,
and you didn't
so
see it
quick.
coming because you weren't
I had the freaking newspaper hanging on my wall.
Yeah,
there's no way this is happening.
You weren't like really consciously aware of your what you were doing, and so you thought like I'm invincible. Almost.
I was not sophisticated to understand failure is very real.
Yeah,
very real. And it happens very often, and how you respond to it is really how you define success. And so anyway, major first failure was that. And that was the defining moment of like, okay, now what do? I defined my entire career, my entire life up to that point as a baseball player.
Yeah, that's who you were. Were you with Kim at the time?
So this is the exact same time I met Kim.
Okay.
So this is where...
And for the listeners, Kim is your wife of 16 years.
16 years. Yeah, we were joking about it yesterday because we forgot how old we were. And so, at the same time, I started dating my now wife, and what was interesting about it, and she still is a much better person than I was, and she became, in a way, what saved me from what I saw was my demise.
Yeah.
Right. So I felt like I was on this trajectory, and I was just going, and I was hitting this apex, and everything was fantastic. Baseball was going great. All these things were happening. And all of a sudden, kind of my world just got shook up in a small way. But for me, it was huge. Getting cut from the team was...
For you, it was your world. It was your everything.
My world. So then this woman comes into my life, and she'd been there for a little while, and we really started connecting, getting to know each other. And it was her as being a better person that really made me realize that I needed to be a better person.
Yeah.
And how do I become that? At the time I was partying a lot. Again, I wasn't taking care of myself. And she was like, I'm not about that. Like, I'm not going to have you in my life and you be doing that dumb stuff. And so it was like, okay, how do I become someone that, people want to be around, people want, and not just that.
The right people want to be around.
Yeah, the right people want to be around.
Because people wanted to be around you plenty at the time.
That's right. So it was very clear, you start dating someone, you start getting kind of exclusive, and you start, disconnecting from your friend group. And not that any of these people were bad, just collectively we were in that age category of making dumb
we're just messing around.
And I'm all for it, know? And so by segmenting ourselves out and kind of starting to do our dating world and going out, I was realizing the decisions I was making and just the things that, I was like, okay, if I want to actually marry this woman, I want to have a life that is something that I could admire and that other people could, I could raise a family around. Like,
Yeah.
I got to change.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy part is, Cody, is I was 18. So this weird thing's happening, right? I'm like on this crescendo, and all of a sudden I fall, and then I meet this girl, and then I'm like, what do I, and so all things come together that her and I decided to get married, which was one of the best decisions of my life. And then we turn around and leave St. George, which is also probably the best decision of my life.
Yeah.
Because what I realized was that I needed nature more than I needed my friends. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because now I understand them collectively.
Yeah. Interesting.
But when I was younger, I spent a lot of time outdoors, and I always loved the outdoors. And then when I got in high school and I got into college, it was much more insular. I was spending much more time indoors. I was spending time, reading the books and doing all that kind of stuff. And then, working at dead end job type stuff, just going through college. And so I lost connection of nature for me personally. So had all this stuff going, me and my wife, we then leave and we moved to Wyoming for the first time. And we're out in the middle of the northeastern part of the state, out in the middle of nowhere, town of, 20,000 people. And I refound my love
What
for
town
nature.
is that?
Gillette.
Oh, Gillette.
Yeah.
Okay.
Refound my love for nature, refound my love for being outside, which is kind of also analogous to what I do. So I'm in this like weird shift from being this baseball player, how I define myself, to now like this, like
Cowboy.
kind of trying to be. I didn't work, but but to be fair, like on a little bit of a path of exploration of where do I go now? What do I do?
Yeah.
This whole time I'm still going to school. I decide, okay, I'm getting married. I got to put my head on straight. I'm going to go get a degree.
So where are you doing, like Wyoming online? Wyoming online?
Sorry. This before I moved to Wyoming. Sorry. Kim and I finished school up at Southern Utah University.
Okay, that's okay. And that's where you met Levi, right?
That's where I met Levi.
Okay.
Yep. Levi played baseball together at SU.
Yeah.
So I did have a little bit of a second half of my career I'd kind of missed off. The whole Utah Tech thing happened, and then I transferred. I took 2 years off, and I transferred to Southern Utah. I ended up my baseball career there, but it was never what it was after that point, because my life had shifted. And so
and you were married.
I was married. Yeah. And
I remember
was
going to
for
your
the future. Yeah.
I remember going to your house in Cedar. We came up and had dinner at your house in Cedar.
Yeah. But at that point, I was looking forward to the future, right? I was looking forward to, okay, what am I going to do? We weren't having kids, or we weren't even planning on having kids at that time, but we were young and married, and we wanted to make sure we were setting ourselves up for success. And so finished with a degree in wildlife biology. And
so did you choose that degree because you wanted to be in nature?
I needed to be in nature. Yeah. I needed to be connected to nature. And, excuse me. So we moved out to Wyoming the first time, and it was awesome. It was reconnecting with nature. It was out,
And Gillette's small.
And it's actually, if you know Wyoming, Gillette, I'm talking about not one of the nicest, prettiest places in Wyoming. No offense, because I love the people. But
interesting, Gillette was our rivals in basketball when I was in Wyoming and Cheyenne. That was the best team. Yep, they were our rivals. And I actually we played in a tournament there, and I got the all tournament team, and I've got a shirt that says all tournament team has a camel on it.
There you go. Love it. Yeah. So, but to be fair, we were broke. Wildlife biology is not a profession of a lot of financial success. You're out there doing things in nature, but it's largely, collecting data for different wildlife species. So you're looking at butterflies and bats and bees and birds and elk and deer. And, so on one hand, I'm loving it. On the other hand, I can't afford to feed a family. I can't afford to raise kids.
And what did you want to do when you were younger? Like before you discovered that nature thing, like if you had asked your baseball playing self at 18,
I was always going to play baseball. There was never other thing. Like that was it.
Oh, you thought you were going to go to the league?
Oh, for sure. Don't laugh, dude. You're mean. No, but hey, actually, there is a kind of a point to that, though. I mean, I think as you move in life, you set goals and you move to those goals.
For sure, yeah.
What happens when you fail from those goals, I think, again, is that's the response. That's
a pivot.
Yeah. But yeah, at that time, I mean, in my little dream at night, in my little journal,
you're playing college baseball. Why not?
Yeah, why not? So it didn't work. But
anyway,
so yeah, reconnected with nature, and then doing birds, bunny stuff out there, just loving life, but have no money, broke, not a lot of upward mobility. It was a really, really small group, and realized that while as much as I love the nature, I needed to understand the dynamic of business and people, and how to make those work, and how to kind of find a path for success in life. And I immediately started connecting and understanding our clients more than anything, the people that are purchasing our services, our data. Yeah. And then also started really focusing and understanding and researching the dynamic with energy in the environment in particular. And so now over the last 12, 15 years, I spent most of my time focusing on large infrastructure project development and its combination and collision with the natural world, so the environment. So everything from how a project impacts birds, bunnies, bees, to how it impacts social issues, or how it impacts visual resources, cultural resources, anthropologic resources. So all these resources that in the natural environment, the environment that I love, when a new project comes in, that are now being impacted by it. So what do we do with water? How do we handle the soils? What do we do? What's the displacement of the wildlife from that? And, on a small scale, like a city lot or something like that, these are pretty minute details. They're not very, but when you're looking at, a $1 billion plus infrastructure project, or you have, the current administration with the infrastructure bill and the Jobs Act pumping trillions of dollars into the economy from largely rebuilding America, rebuilding the infrastructure and transforming the infrastructure, going from a oil and gas based economy or carbon based economy potentially to a non-carbon based economy.
What do you think about that?
Oh, it's it doesn't it doesn't really matter what I think about it, to be fair. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, CO2 carbon is definitely part of the climate challenge. It's definitely well scientifically studied that, anthropogenically we're producing a lot of it by burning fossil fuels and other forms of electronics. So how I feel about it's kind of irrelevant. We've decided as society that we're going to decarbonize.
What would you do though?
The problem is with just the flat out like, hey, we're going to decarbonize, is that it's really not possible.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons why.
Because we're going to need those cheaper sources of fuel.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not just cheaper. It really has to do with energy density, and it really has to do with like the land mass ability to produce the power to provide it to the people.
Well, yeah, because like all those European countries that have like moved away from it are now just buying traditional fuel from other countries, right?
Because they have for a long time. And so like somebody like Germany had to go away from fossil fuels because they don't have fossil fuels. They were always an importer. So they went over to like solar, and they went to wind, and they went to other forms, largely because their landmass didn't have an alternative form to produce energy. So in the U.S., we're really lucky because we have all forms. And that's one of the reasons why we're the wealthiest nation in the world, right? We have oil and gas resources, we have coal resources, we have uranium resources, we have other mineral and material resources like iron ore, we have natural gas, oil, we have propane, we have all of the things. Plus we have wind, plus we have solar, plus we have landmass to move this across,
and so water, right?
And water, yeah. So from a ecological and geological geographical location, we are in a prime spot to be a part of the energy production, energy mix. But some places aren't like that. And so why I say partly that, I'm just kind of, it's I don't have an opinion, because depending on where you're at really should be how you approach your energy mix, and how that impact on the environment should also.
And when you say where you're at, do you mean more regionally for the United
Totally.
States than just like a blanket policy for all 50 states? You're saying that this state could be this way and this state could be this way?
Yeah, like, if I showed you a map, if we had a map of like, say, wind resources, like where is it windy?
Wyoming,
right? Where is it not windy? Like, I don't know, Florida doesn't have a lot of wind, for example. So if you're going to say, hey, we're going to go to 100% wind renewables, like how are you moving now those electrons that are being produced by the wind out of Wyoming to anywhere else?
Sure.
So now you're saying, okay, so the easiest way I've talked a lot about this is historically we've produced our energy in raw form in the middle of a region and then transport it to the area of refinement. So if we're historically looking at coal resources or oil and gas resources, for example, those mines and those oil and gas fields aren't generally right next to downtown metropolis. There are some areas where there's bled in after growth, but in general, our oil and gas production is out of Texas, rural Wyoming, rural North Dakota, rural Oklahoma, rural Louisiana. We're talking about areas that aren't heavily populated. Yeah. And then same thing with our coal resource, same thing with our uranium resource, same thing with all of our resources that are associated with generally producing energy right now. Is largely not in the backyard of folks. The problem is you produce it in a raw form, meaning that energy hasn't been expended yet, right? If I pull a lump of coal out, it's still a lump of coal till I ignite that. When I ignite it is what produces the energy. Okay. So I move that lump of coal wherever I want in a train or in a truck or whatever the case is, and then we burn it, or same thing with natural gas, we burn it or whatever. We use it close to the actual location. So you'll see raw product being produced one place, but refinement or chemical plants or facilities are usually much, much closer to the density
What about
areas.
Nuclear power? Because there's been a lot in the news lately about like that nuclear power is really good, and that and like California was going to close down their last one, and they decided not to, I think, right?
Yeah, nuclear is just scary to people, right? It's just the problem with nuclear is not that it's probably not the solution to our power and energy needs. It really probably is, if you think about it.
Right? Isn't nuclear power the best power?
Well,
all
again,
things considered?
it depends. The problem again. So the problem with
I don't mean
nuclear
to get
power
you in
is
trouble.
no, it's
with your big role.
No. The problem with nuclear power is that it can be very catastrophic.
Sure.
And so it's the public perception about nuclear that's the biggest challenge. The other challenge with nuclear is that we really haven't invested in it the last 30 years as an economy, right? So our our nuclear expertise largely came during the wars when we were trying to really drive to the nuclear atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And we brought in a bunch of Russian scientists as part of that were able to transfer that knowledge onto the U.S. Scientists. This knowledge transfer, though, stopped about 30 years ago when we stopped building nuclear plants. I mean, think about it. If you're a nuclear engineer and you're one of the handful of people that can actually do and design and regenerate a nuclear plant, and then they're saying, hey, we're not going to build any.
No one's going into nuclear.
No one's going into nuclear engineering anymore. I mean, so the part of the problem is we have a knowledge vacuum now that we'd have to get back over. Now it's there, the knowledge exists, just the people to apply that knowledge is what the issue is.
Sure.
But no, nuclear is a good solution. It's something that in my opinion, we should be using a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. Energy density wise, like one little particle of uranium it just produces 10 for 100x like that of oil, gas, or any other energy source, honestly, wind, solar, anything like that.
What about global warming? Is that real?
Oh, geez.
Can I ask you these questions?
Yeah, you can ask me whatever you want. No, I mean, climate change is very real. I mean, global warming, the climate's been changing forever. And the idea is, I'm also not an expert on this. Again, I told you guys my background. I got kicked out of junior college to start. Okay, but I have studied this a lot. So, it's very. I mean, the master's PhD level of everybody will tell you 100%. The release of CO2 in the atmosphere has a warming effect on the climate. So now the argument of how that is impactful and in what timeline that's impacted, I think is probably the challenge of all the climate change argument, and the challenge behind that is that it drives policy. So if someone comes out, and I can't remember exactly, I think Al Gore in the 90s come out and said something crazy, right? Like, hey, by 2000,
they've been saying it forever,
right? So the challenge with this, Cody, I was listening to one of your podcasts not long ago, and I think you said this about a friend, right? Like if a friend tells you all the time that they're going to come over and then they never come over, you stop losing validity of that they're actually going to come over.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that kind of an argument.
They keep saying it's going to happen, and
when you cry wolf for so long, you lose the public's support that this is actually going to happen. Now, the science is showing that we're warming, and so then the question becomes, really at what rate and by when, and what's the impact of that. And that's where the argument really gets kind of heated and debated. And I'm not that kind of an expert, to be fair, in that to say, okay, if it was 1.5 degrees Celsius versus 1 degree Celsius, and at what timeline and what would sea level rise, and when, I have no clue. But I can tell you this, the policy that's being driven out of that. So the idea that by X date, you have to have X, Y, and Z done so that none of this happens and catastrophic failure doesn't exist and we all survive. Like, that's probably the bigger challenge because our economy, especially here in the U.S., isn't set up to move that fast. I mean,
well, even like the electric cars in California, that's not feasible, right? Because they've got that date to have. You have to have all dealerships have to have electric cars in like 7 years or something. And like just last summer, California was having rolling blackouts because of power, and they're telling people not to charge their cars. So it's like, I don't know that they have the infrastructure to have, nor can everyone afford it. They're like, the government's like, yeah, just get a Tesla. It's fine. It's like, have you looked at the price of a Tesla? Not everyone can just get a Tesla. It's not that easy.
The energy transition conversation is a challenge for that reason.
And aren't we so reliant on China for all of our electric cars because we have to have, or cobalt, like the African mines, right? Like we need to have these really challenging items to be able to make that stuff happen. And so it's like, if someone looked at a mine and like how they get cobalt and watch these little children, it's like the blood diamonds.
It's unfortunate.
This is like our generation's blood diamond. So people are driving their Teslas, drinking their oat milk lattes, like, look at me, look what I'm doing. But do they realize that like a 7-year-old kid is in there, and like a mother with a baby on her back, like mining cobalt?
No, not a chance, right? And that's like the NIMBY, what we call the NIMBY, the not in my backyard approach, right? So so the idea that something, NIMBY. The idea that something that's disconnected from you doesn't impact you, right? So I don't lose sleep at night thinking about what a decision I made to buy something has for someone.
Well, even like our iPhones, right? Because at the Apple factory, they have nets around the buildings.
It's wild,
because people jump off the building to try and kill themselves. So they put up nets so that the way the people don't die. So they can go back and make more.
And I still sleep.
Phones. I know. And I still like my phone, and I'll buy another one. That sucks.
I know. What were we saying?
Is it feasible for California to move to electric cars at that time?
I mean, no, but at the same time, progress is progress. Like, you make a goal to move to
Is it progress, do you think? Do you think we're better off if it's all electric cars versus what we have now?
I think if society has decided to decarbonize, which we have, then you have no choice but to move towards that goal. If you don't, then all of this is for naught. We're just spending money, and we have no real desire to truly change the impact on the environment. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? If you think of like economies, and as the economies progress, and you look at the U.S., I mean, the industrialization of the United States is what made the United States the United States.
Yeah, right.
Right. And out of the industrialization came the manufacturing revolution. The problem is now, after the manufacturing revolution came through, it basically made America wealthy.
Yeah.
And then once you're wealthy, you decide that you want to generally make more wealth, and you're going to export that to places that you can produce that for cheaper.
Right.
So most of their manufacturing is now moved overseas, which is also part of the problem. And manufacturing,
and that's what I was thinking too. For electric cars, we would then only be able to be reliant on some outside force. Like, we cannot produce electric cars for the United States in the United States.
You could make, build them. We could build a factory to put them together.
Yeah.
But from the raw resource,
we don't have it.
No chance. And so that's part of the issue.
That's my concern, is I don't want to have our only source of transportation be entirely reliant.
You and I were too young, but I think in the 80s, 90s, there was the oil embargo stuff where people were lining up to get gas bidding on the day of their license plate. So if it was an even or odd, you only got gas certain days. And that was because we were so reliant on foreign oil.
Yeah.
We had to import all of it. So similar to kind of what we're seeing with Germany, right?
Yeah,
you get into a war with Russia, and all of a sudden your natural gas supply is cut off, your prices skyrocket. I mean, honestly, that's exactly what happened to us 50s, 60s, 70s with the oil embargo stuff. And so your fear is valid, and I have the same, right? Which is, if we don't domestically develop our own supply, you're going to run into an issue that someone else is going to handle that supply. And if they decide to turn off that spout, and you're making, and this is where I think the challenge, and it's why I find what I do so fascinating, is I work on the environmental side, but we have this energy policy that's colliding with it. And so if we're going to say, hey, we want to move to electric cars by 2050, 100% electric cars by 2050, I mean, we need to build 5 or 10 lithium mines and cobalt mines in America.
Yeah.
Cody, right now, if you told me you had all the money in the world and you wanted to build a mine, I'm telling you, it's 15 years. Best case scenario, before you start putting a shovel in the ground.
Do we even have cobalt here in the United States?
We have one cobalt mine. It's in Idaho. It's called Idaho Cobalt. They're working on developing it, start production. But yeah, I mean, we got one facility in the entire
And then we need
US.
lithium.
We need lithium. I mean, you need all the materials, right?
And do we have lithium here in the United States?
You have a few lithium mines. Lithium's interesting because it can be processed a variety of different ways.
Okay.
The problem with lithium is it's very water intensive, and it's really closely aligned with salts. So if you think about it from that perspective, you're usually going to find lithium in areas of dry lake bed type situations. So there's a lot of lithium in Nevada, old oceanic salts that were left behind, and now there's lithium that's associated with it.
You can find seashells in Wyoming.
You can find a lot of stuff in Wyoming.
Yeah.
You can. Well, it's because, Utah too. I mean, this whole area used to be under the ocean. So there's, a lot of the big fossils you find are, actually aquatic species, right? They're not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So we do have some lithium mines, several that are being developed in Nevada, 1 or 2 in California that are currently operating, but our production and our need for it is tenfold what we currently have.
So then if I get just a little bit conspiracy tin hat, is it concerning to you to have a fully electronic vehicle? Because I personally believe, in the event that there is another world war, right? I believe that there will be a huge electrical component to that, and that they would shut off the cyber attacks on electrical grids. And so if you had a fully electric car, so even my car now that runs on gas, it'd be the same way.
Your car wouldn't run that anyway.
Shut it down. So is that concerning to you at all? Do you feel I want to have an old school gas vehicle just in case?
Dude, I live in Wyoming. That's one of the reasons why.
You're already you're already prepared.
I'm not a prepper, but I'm prepared.
But do you think that's important to have a vehicle that doesn't have a computer
emergency
in it?
Preparedness is important. I'm not going to go off and say no. I mean, I have no idea, dude. Yeah, that could happen. I don't know. I can't waste time on that stuff. What concerns me about a fully electric vehicle is I live in rural America.
Yeah. So what are you going to, where can you go?
I've told my company this. I would like to buy one for me personally. I would like to be the first in our company fleet of vehicles we have. I think it'd be fun. We work on mines. Part of what we do is we support development of a variety of big infrastructure projects. So we have mining clients. And so I thought, oh man, it's kind of cool. We could figure it out. We did research. The problem is I drive 40,000 miles a year roughly, partly because of my geographic area, right? And I'm 200 miles away from the other towns and all different stuff. And so the miles is the issue that I run into. The range is the issue. And they said that is part of the issue, is that with EVs, it's range fatigue, right? It's the idea that you can't get from A to B, and then that scares the crap out of you, because the difference between, again, the movement of electrons from oil and from like a conventional fossil fuel to the combustion in your engine is instantaneously. So you run out of gas, you just put some more in, boom, goes.
Yeah.
The electric charge, you have to move that. You have to produce that electric. See, this is what's crazy about it, right? So an electric vehicle type of sense, you produce that electricity somewhere else, right? Whatever it is, wind, solar, fossil fuels, however you want to say it. And then let's say you put it into your car, you drive, and your car drives, it's dead, right? It's on the side of the road. You're then taking electrons from somewhere else again and putting it into another battery storage. So like just a bigger battery, and then someone else is having to drive out to you, and then you're having to transfer those electrons from one battery to another battery, like in jumper cables, more or less. And then you have to transfer those electrons, and they have to sit there until there's enough electrons to give you enough range to get to where you need to go, so that you can charge the whole thing up. So that's what I think the bigger challenge for EVs, I think, is just like, how do you not end up on the side of the road for 2 hours with kids screaming in the back seat when your minivan's not charged?
Well, I saw, because there's those new buses the administration came up with, those electrical buses, and I saw a picture of one with like a gas powered bus next to it, plugged into it, because the gas powered plus had a generator, and
it's
it was
comical at times.
Yeah. And I saw a picture of a Tesla in California last year that had like a moving rack on the back, and it had a generator on it.
But we also have driven electric cars, right? And we've been in Tesla.
No,
and
I think I love them. I think they're dope. I mean, I would drive a Tesla. I just wouldn't want it to be my only car.
And that's a problem.
Right, like I would
$100,000.
I know.
Yeah, this is my third or fourth one.
Brian called me and he said, "I'm thinking about going electric. What do you think?" And I said, honestly, I think it's amazing. The technology is incredible. The cars are great. I just wouldn't want it to be my only car, just because like something happens and you got to get somewhere. Like, oh, there's an emergency here. Yeah. And now I may or may not be able to get there. That's why I wouldn't want it to be my only car.
Now, to be fair, it used to be the exact same with combustible cars, with oil and gas cars, right? Like before the U.S. was built out and before infrastructure existed for it,
sure,
you had the same sort of concern,
everywhere.
right?
Yeah.
You would have been the bozo that was, had gas in the back of your vehicles. They're like, so again, this is my point. Like right now, yeah, it's like, oh, that's tough. But as we progress 5 or 10 years down the road, that issue will not be the same issue, right? And they're looking at a variety of different ways of charging these vehicles that are going to change it, right?
Do you think gas stations of the future then are just charging stations with a convenience store attached to it?
If I was betting, I don't think gas stations of the future will exist. Why would you? I mean, you cannot transfer electrons fast enough for a gas station to make sense for electric vehicles. I don't think.
Oh, because you're saying you got to sit there for 45 minutes.
Oh, dude, think about the real estate you're going to have to. Just think if it takes you 30 minutes. Let's say it takes 30 minutes. We get to the point where it's 30 minutes for a full charge. How many do you need? How many as a business owner do you need to get that
Maverick
turnover?
Wouldn't be on every corner.
Maverick wouldn't be on any corner, and Maverick wouldn't be Maverick because you can't make enough return.
That's right.
Because selling Snickers.
You need to sell gas every 5 minutes.
The margins on gas is high.
That's interesting. So potential business idea.
An immersive
experience where those 30 minutes, it's incredible. You've got like masseuses, you've got
something like
coffee bars.
Something completely different.
Yeah.
I think it'll be coffee. It'll be cafes, coffee bars.
Maybe a little gym, get a pump in.
Heck yeah, dude. I think
probably in New Jersey to be like a laundromat, a gym, and a tanning bed, and little GTL other car charges.
You could get creative and make a fortune in this business.
That's what I'm saying.
So you ask about, going back to your question of like, does this whole thing kind of scare you? Like this whole, no, because there's the industrial revolution, the manufacturing. Like this is
so we're just in the next revolution.
Yeah, you're in the next revolution.
I guess it's like saying, was the internet scary?
Is the internet scary? There's going to be parts of it that are going to be hard and complicated and difficult, and there'll be things that part of it that fail. There'll be good things that come of it. Hopefully what comes out of it is that we recognize that we want to produce those materials domestically as opposed to overseas.
That's really my thing. If we could do it all in-house, I'm not saying that we have to, not saying that we'd have, but just have the ability to, in the event that something happened, that we wouldn't just be completely...
There's definitely people trying, right? There's a lot of investment going into it right now. yeah, it's just an interesting, but we also love the natural world, right? So there's another interesting part. Again, this is the other side of where I come in is,
Do you want to ruin your nature to build mines?
right, mining, I mean, to be fair, is the most impactful form of development we've got.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've seen a mine, I mean, you've been up to Salt Lake.
Yeah, well, I've seen the one in Tooele. What's that one? Copper?
Yeah, the Rio Tinto
Yeah.
project. I mean,
That's crazy.
It's crazy, right? But that also is a very vital and necessary resource for our
Yeah.
current economy. So again, it's like this,
And it produces
catch-22.
jobs.
It produces jobs, and it produces copper, which is an amazing resource that we need for a variety of things: cell phones, computers, you name it, cars. So that's where it's tough. It's like, am I pro decarbonization? Yes, in a lot of senses, because if what the science is telling us regarding climate change and global warming is accurate, then yeah, we're going to run into sea level rise issues in the future.
Do you say is accurate because you don't know?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in that kind of stuff. I find it too nuanced for me to enjoy. They're arguing over models and projections, which I've done.
You'd rather argue about reality.
I don't know. Sure. I just rather not argue about that one. I'm not passionate about it enough. No, I think that's my issue.
Okay, here's a question for you.
Go for it.
So obviously, like, we care about our world.
Yeah.
But when do you stop caring? How many generations down the line does it matter to you? Like, let's say that the world is getting really hot and 100 years from now, it's going to turn into a fiery ball. Does that matter to you?
It's too long term for me to think. I think
Right, because you got your kids and you're going to know their grandkids. You're going to know.
I think it's more. I guess my thought is more about
5
like
generations?
what's right about let's put it this way. We know we're getting better every day as humans about what we do.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. If you go to most places in the U.S., they've got great energy, great water resources. They're clean. They're usually safe. If you go to a lot of other parts of the world, like some of those challenges are not, I mean, they're very different. I mean, just getting food or getting water.
Yeah.
So we have the luxury of having this debate because we're wealthy, right?
Even being in Cabo last week, driving on the way to this unbelievable resort, I'm looking around and people have like the water jugs on their roof.
Yeah.
Where they're collecting rainwater and using that as a source of water for their homes.
So what's weird about that, Cody, I actually think that's probably a very smart move. I mean, from like a sustainability factor,
Yeah.
I mean, like it's fresh water that's largely untreated. You can just filter and start using it for, whatever.
What made me think, because Megan's family has a cabin up in Bryan Head, and I was like, and it snowed so much.
Yeah.
I was like, man, they should have had like a thing.
Yeah.
To,
You know what's wild about that? There's some places in the world you can't catch water. It's illegal because water is actually owned by the state. It's kind of
don't you only own like 10 feet above your house or your property, and then like anything above 10 feet?
I have no idea. That sounds ridiculous.
It's true. You own 10 feet above your house.
We have a law case going on right now in Wyoming about and I'm going to get this wrong, I'm sure of it, but some hunters that came out elk hunting in central part of the state 2 years ago and got charged for trespassing. But in Wyoming, and Nevada has a lot too, Utah has as well, but there's this checkerboard area. When they settled the railroads, they gave 30 miles on each side of the rail, every other section to the railroad. And then the other section was federal government, BLM, Bureau of Land Management.
So the railroad owns that land?
They did. They don't own it all now.
Okay.
It's been sold off several different times. A part of it has been sold off to some large landowners that own big ranches. And so these checkerboard patterns end up just like a checkerboard. And so they crossed over the corner, right? So they put a ladder that went from public land. So if this is like the line from like public land to public land, put a ladder over it and walked up and over it. Okay. So
they never actually walked on the private land.
Yeah, never walked on private land. But this became like highly contentious. So this super wealthy landowner from North Carolina owns this giant ranch, and he's suing. So he's lost. I think he's lost. I need to pull up the news and wildfile to like pull up the actual details.
And then all they did is kill an elk?
Yeah, to go to
what is that? What does he care?
Well, it's private land, private property. You can't trespass. So his argument is that they trespassed, even though they were on public land with their feet both times. They never physically stepped in his property, saying the act of crossing the corner where it's an infinitely small point where the four pieces come together, that act his argument basically is like there's not a physical way with an infinitely small point that the four corners of a property meet that a person couldn't trespass. You're not infinitely small. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I actually think about being infinitely small.
Do you?
No.
It makes you aligns you a little bit better. So they put a ladder over it, right? Like little geniuses. And
That's hilarious.
They got caught. They got arrested, or they got fines, and then they challenged.
How does someone catch someone for that?
Because the landowner this is unfortunately a common challenge. Corner crossing is one of these like back and forth discussions.
He has like what, trail cams out there or something and caught him?
Well, something like that. That, or they had, and I think in this case, the ranch manager actually like caught them either by there or doing,
or like moving the elk out or something.
Yeah, something like there was some sort of like they know that they were there. I can't remember the exact details. But so here's the funny part. So that's not actually the point.
Oh, we're not even to the funny part.
No, that's not part. So they get arrested or they get fined or whatever the case is, and they get set free, they get adjudicated, or whatever. So they don't get it. And then the private landowner, who's worth $1 bazillion, some pharmaceutical guy from North Carolina, turns around and sues them, because now his argument is that because that it was no longer illegal to corner cross, that it now devalues the ranch by something to the tune of $7 to $8 million, because now there's a lot of inholdings in the ranch where other people can now cross into what historically he would have considered private land. So it's public land.
Oh, so
surrounded by private land.
So it's like landlocked. No one can access it, but now they figured out how to get to it.
And now you can hopscotch like checkers.
I mean, which he's not wrong. Obviously, your land's less valuable if it's now accessible to the masses.
Now he's suing these guys that corner cross to go hunt elk for like some. But what's also weird about it is that's like a hypothetical what you think, property. I mean, property is only worth what somebody's going to pay for. You can get an appraisal, or you can look at your tax rolls. Yeah. But that's not, I don't know. But wow. Anyway.
Man, that's crazy. That's, I want to see a picture of the ladder.
It's just a ladder.
So who's going to win?
As a non-extremely wealthy outdoor fan, I mean, I'm hopeful that the guys do. I'd like to have access to a bunch of property I haven't been able to get on for a long time. The private property part, principlers of the world are going to say that they want, the landowner to probably have it. I don't know. Who knows? I just think it's interesting.
I mean, what's that? The guy's not going to, I get it. So the guy who's suing, he doesn't really care about the money, because not like these guys are going to have $7 million to give him. He's suing for the precedent so that land jumping is no longer illegal.
I think that's part of the game.
That's what he's trying to do.
That's part of the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an interesting story.
I don't know how we got off topic. We were talking about air. We were talking about
how much land you own above.
Apparently a ladder is all it is.
I told you 10 feet.
And that's even over a fence, not even the roof of the house.
Yeah, it's 10 feet over the highest part of that particular land. I believe you own 10 feet above it. And like 10 feet down too from the bottom of your structure. And then it's not yours anymore.
That's it.
What do you think is our biggest environmental threat in the United States? Like, what should, if there's anything to be worried about, what should people be worried about? People always talk about water. We got so much water this year.
Yeah.
Like there was that one lake in California. They said it would take 10 years to fill up. It filled up this year.
Yeah. So the interesting part about California is the amount of water they can hold. I mean, the Sierra Nevada mountains have an amazing capacity, as we saw this year, to get a tremendous amount of snow. And that's not an anomaly. I mean, it's an anomaly because, if you go year over year, snowfall average is obviously high. They're 200%. But it's not like it's the first 200% that we've ever had. Right.
And it's 200% from like the worst ever. So,
no, it's 200. It was 2% from average. So you average those all out. Yeah. So you do basically what your average your rainfall or snowfall, your water equivalent would be. So what you get in an average year. So here in St. George, for example, you get like, I don't know, my guess is like 6 to 8 inches a year. Yeah. Would be my guess. That doesn't mean you haven't had a 14 or 16 inch year before.
Got it.
It doesn't mean you haven't had a 1 or 2 inch year.
Yeah.
So Sierra Nevada is, given where they're at in their proximity, coming right off the ocean, you get this massive amount of, voluminous precipitation that's accumulating in the clouds that are coming over those mountains. And they have the ability to dump just a tremendous amount of snow and rain. So it can fill it very quick. Here's the other challenge with water, though, is it's one, we're so dependent on the current geographic location it falls. So example would be if you look at the Colorado River Basin. So you look at Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Yeah. And Flaming Gorge above, and you look at their water levels, they're rising from all the snowfall, but not nearly what you were
I think
seeing.
Powell rise 60 feet so far.
Yeah, but they're down, what? Two or
still,
300, right?
Yeah, right.
Something
so
ridiculous.
Down a huge amount.
So it will take time, and will take multiple years for those reservoirs to fill back up at multiple years of over, 150+%. The challenge is where the snow falls or where the rain falls, and so like for an example, all the stuff that falls it has to fall in the Colorado River Basin is the point. So all the Sierra Nevada stuff, unless that all basically drains to California, right? And then all the Wyoming, all the stuff on the eastern side of the Continental Divide all goes to the Mississippi. So really, the water resource challenge that we have is circled around Utah, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, which is the Colorado River drainage, which is also one of the driest drainages in the United States.
Because everything else is going this way.
It's got to go this way.
So we're kind of like in the middle.
You're in a bowl.
Yeah.
And so the precipitation's got to come in the form of that bowl. Now, as we've seen, and you can go to like LA, right? The LA water project, like the big aqueduct, right? And so you can move water back and forth and we can do different things, but water is very costly to move. And so you look at the cost associated with moving a gallon of water versus a gallon of gas. It's more expensive to move a gallon of water.
Right.
And so part of that's the reason why we end up in these drought situations. We don't have the infrastructure on water nearly what we do for electricity, oil, gas, or any other resource. But it's just because it's so heavy and it's slow moving and it's expensive. And it's usually been, you're able to get it where you've been localized.
Yeah.
You can go out, pump a well out, put a well in the water. But that's running out here in Southern Utah, right? I mean, there's a lot of areas that you can't just go acquire water anymore. You have to have existing water rights. And those water rights have to be prescribed and they go by years.
That property I was telling you about, we got to drill down and hope that there's water down there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's it. If it's not below us, then we got to like truck it in and store it on property.
Water's a challenge for sure. I have a theory on it though.
What about like our food source?
What's interesting, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Power Density. Author's last name's Smil. And so basically the idea is you look at the landscape and you look at how do you produce power across a landscape and how does that, each type of power gives off a different amount of energy. So the idea would be you want the most dense amount of power on the least amount of ground possible. During this course of the book, there's a part of it that he talks about nutrition. And they say, okay, well, Cody, what's the average person need? Like calorie wise, what's the goal?
Oh, probably 2,000.
2,000.
Yeah.
Right now we buy on average 3,700 per person per day.
Well, yeah, we're fat. So that makes total sense.
What does that mean? We have a 48% waste rate.
Or people are eating 3,700 calories. I mean, that's probably true. I mean, look at America.
Still waste, right? I mean,
waste in the sense of it's more than they need to eat.
Right. Yeah, we're either throwing it away, we're using too much of it.
Or overeating. Yeah, that's true, for sure.
So food is an interesting one because it's largely driven by the consumers that want to use it, right? And if we all, in some ways, just said scaled back, you have 47% more of
that. Makes me feel good.
Yeah, it does, right?
So as an environmental person, do you, how important is it for you to eat organic? Like in your household, is it like, oh, we're all organic or?
No, I don't know.
No. Interesting. Just because you're in this space, I thought maybe you'd be.
I don't know. No.
It's all organic.
I mean,
I'll have to ask Kim. I asked the wrong person.
I was talking about this the other day. No. We raise a lot of our own food, which is
so that's organic.
So that's all organic.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the only thing we really buy. We definitely don't purposely eat organic all day every day. I was thinking about this the other day though, because you'll get a kick out of this. So I'm doing this group leadership meeting, and we're talking about ChatGPT and AI and all that, and we're like, how's this going to impact our industry and and oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah. So I wonder if in the future there's going to be an opportunity to sell yourself as organic, like non-Chat GPT. So your business is not diluted by AI, and so your whole branding scheme. And I've thought about this from a consulting side because we sell more or less hours and expertise in a lot of our business, and so the idea would be you're hiring me for my hours and expertise. And if AI could take that away, you're now paying me less. Could I sell myself as organic or something?
For a higher price.
For a higher price.
Because it's like a real human.
It's a real human.
Yeah. Well, I think that, this little tin hattie again, but there could be a time when if your bloodline has never had RMNA in you before, then perhaps you could be more suitable.
Yeah, that's real tinfoil hattie.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that.
Handmaid's Tale,
I'm
man.
just going hiking up in the woods too by myself.
Okay. All right. So I got a question for you. Awesome backstory. That was we just ripped on a bunch of really fun stuff. No one will ever sit in that chair again and have that same conversation. I can promise you that. So that's pretty cool. So biggest win in your life. What would you say your biggest win in your life is?
Deciding what you value and deciding that it doesn't have to be monetary. And actually, by having a goal that's non-monetary, I think that it drives to a higher monetary potential.
Sure. If you're focused on all these other great things, then the money will follow. If you have good habits and good behaviors and good reasoning.
Focus on the right things.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's always been, I want to be somewhere where I can be around nature and where I can have access to all the things I need to be, whole for myself. And then to not focus on things that, just do good projects with good people and the rest will happen, I guess is
sure.
just.
So at what point in your life do you think you realized that shift? Because I think most young people start off monetary, right? Because that's like what you need. And so it starts off with like I just want to make six figures, or I just want this, or I just want that. So what time for you did that shift happen?
It's a good question. I've never valued money as the final goal.
So you didn't even have to make a shift. You just went into it. That wasn't your goal.
I always went into it with the idea that if I work really hard and I make good, right, proper decisions, I'll be okay and I'll be taken care of and the money will follow. And to be fair, Cody, that's happened my entire career. Yeah. I've just worked my tail off. I've tried really, really hard. And now I put myself in positions that are leadership positions. And now next thing you know, you're a few years later leading a company, making the money didn't even think that you deserve it. You're more whatever the case is. Like, it's not even about like
your career arc is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's not even about, but that's my point. It's not about, it's never been about that.
Yeah. Well, that just happened because of all the other things.
And it just happened. I think truly, like, if you just keep waking up every morning and you put pedal to the metal without any sort of, just define your goal, whatever your goal is, but don't define it as money, right? That's, I think, the challenge. If you just say, I want to have $10 million in my bank account, you're going to do whatever it takes to get $10 million. And there becomes ethical and moral and,
Well, so that's when you sacrifice your health and you sacrifice your family, because the goal wasn't like, I want a holistically healthy life. It was, I want this monetary thing.
So the guy that started my company is retiring. And what's amazing is that he started a company, sold it, he's going to retire, Florida with the boat, doing everything that you'd ever want from retirement side. But he gave up 40 years of his life doing it.
Right.
And so again, that's where it's like, how do you define what too many people, I think, define money as their goal, and then they get it, and then now they're not happy, and then what? You just defined your whole entire life by that.
Or even they're going for it, kind of like the guy who you worked for started your company, like, I'm going to make all this money so then I can retire.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what about the 40 years like that you had like all of your wits about you and your ability and your family? And
so I think, like, if you're going to have a goal, like, let's say retirement's a goal, right? You're like, hey, I want to retire. Like, I wouldn't say like I want to retire with X dollars in my bank account, or I want to retire. Like, I would say I want to retire in a place that makes me happy. I want to retire in a place where I have the ability to have access to this and I'm comfortable. I want to have or I want to retire at an age, right? Maybe that's the difference. Like, part of me is, my goal is like, okay, I'm not a showy, flashy person. I want to retire early though. Like, I want to go enjoy life. I don't want to do 65, 70 years of grinding and then have 5 years of life left.
Do you really think you'll stop working though?
I think you just redefine work.
Yeah. Cause I don't think that you will ever be like, oh, I'm not doing anything now.
Yeah, you just read it.
Even if you did, I think you'd only last like a year or two, and then
I'd be so bored.
Yeah, you'd be back in it. Okay, so next one. This one's harder. What's your biggest loss?
Oddly, this sounds a little weird. Friends.
Oh, interesting. That's a first. Elaborate.
Yeah. So, and you've probably all heard, and we've probably all, and it's probably not the same for everybody. Maybe this is a corporate America difference.
Sure.
The old saying, like, heavy is the head that wears the crown type of situation. I mean, being in a position of leadership is not fun at times.
You're right.
Not
because
easy.
if you're the CEO of a major company, you cannot have a friendship with the people you work with, because you got to be their leader.
And the worst part is, I'm very relationship based. Like, I want to surround myself with people that I can trust and that I care about and that I feel for and that I'll do anything for. And so like, you look at our group and what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, I've never been more proud of our team. But every day I lose sleep over that whole idea of like, man, these are people I care about. These people I love. And so probably the biggest challenge is recognizing that as you grow in your career, there's going to be times when you're going to have to make a decision that's going to impact a friendship potentially.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's really tough. And so there's books out there like, don't hire your friends, don't hire your family, don't do any of that. But then there's other things that's like, do everything off relationships, right? Make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people you can trust and people you care for. And I tend to fall in love really easy. I tend to fall in love with people I care about a lot. And
Yeah.
so I'm not the type of person that can just hire someone off the street and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, be like, yeah, you're not sayonara. It's like, no, if you're coming with us, you're part of the family. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to take care of you and we're going to work
Yeah.
hard. We're going to,
Yeah.
And so, but part of that makes it really strenuous on friends, and it makes it really strenuous on having relationships, because when you get into corporate America, a lot of where you meet friends now is in work, right? It's corporate conferences, it's on the golf course doing something,
right.
and I made a lot of friends doing it, but then all of a sudden you move forward in your career and it's like, now, hey, there's a new opportunity. Hey, come join us, and then all of a sudden you've accumulated this, amazing, talented folk. And then you realize these are all people you care deeply about.
Yeah.
And it's like the last thing you want to now do is see that fail. And so one of the things, oddly, that's kind of gone out with, as I've kind of grown in my career, is my friends groups has gotten a lot smaller.
Yeah.
And I'm also spending a lot more time or thinking a lot about more of my original friends, the folks that I grew up with.
That's why I think
before.
what we have is so special,
It's
our
very
group of
special.
friendships, because it's not tied to like those other lives that we've all gone out and made. Like, it's tied back to adolescence and childhood. And
well, and you guys don't. I mean, to be fair, like the original, like you guys don't treat me different. I don't treat you different. We're still,
exactly the
like
same.
but you get to the certain point where you're out in your community or whatever, you meet someone different. It's like, I'm no longer introduced as, Rio, the kid you went to high school with. Like, I'm introduced as this different person, and that becomes the different levels of.
the only thing that's different is like, I will let you pay for golf today. You know what I mean? Like, I'll let you do that.
I think we should play for it.
I'm definitely not doing that. Okay, that was a great answer. Next thing I want to talk about is a mentor. Have you had a mentor as you went through like this career progression? Like, did you have someone there that was a great guidepost for you?
Mentor.
Oh,
Yeah. Do you remember?
sometimes that's
I don't
more
know if I
valuable.
want to say this out loud.
You have to say their name.
She. When did you move to St. George? Did you go to seventh grade year?
No, before sophomore year. So that was like 2002.
Okay, seventh grade year, I had a science teacher, and we took a personality test.
Do you know which one it was? The Myers-Briggs disc.
What's the color one? Is disc the color one where it's like
No,
red?
disc is like, but I know the color. I don't know the name of it, but
I
I know
don't
what
know.
you're talking
I've
about.
done so many of them. The yellow, blue, red.
Yep,
green.
I know that one.
Okay, and they all have their different things.
Mallory, could you look up and see what the name of the personality test is with the colors?
Yeah.
So we all take the test, and we all go through, and she gets up front, and we're going through everybody's results, right? And I, at the time, and I'm still very, yellow, whatever, outgoing, extroverted, very, very high. And she immediately, this could be me building this up a little bit as far as like, I was, 12, 13, and this is my thought. But she basically proceeded to like burn me at the stake almost. Like, she was like in front of the entire class was, hey, yellow, my sister's a yellow just like you. She can't graduate college. She's never going to become something.
Wow.
Don't expect a yellow to ever amount to anything. Like, I mean, she legit said this. And so since that day, I've like thought, I think about it religiously. I think about it, one, like, why would a teacher ever say that to a student?
It's amazing how things like that can stick with you.
Yeah, right. There's also probably the competitive nature of it. It's like, tell me I can't do it and I will type of situation.
Yeah.
So in an odd way, that's kind of like an anti-mentor of someone that I've thought, like, how can someone, and if I'm probably not the only one, right? Like, if
What's interesting too is, so think back to that time, right? When that was, there probably was a belief at that time that like you had to be scholastically intellectual to
Absolutely.
succeed, where now in today's world, I feel like relationships are so important. So I think the extroverted people oftentimes are more successful because they're willing to go to a room and talk to people and shake hands and build relationships. And I'm sure your career, so much of your advancement came from, man, I really like this Rio guy, and so then it's like you're getting opportunities because they like you. I know for me, like every opportunity I've gotten, they really stemmed from, I really like him. And that's where it starts.
I think you have to be conscious about it too. I think you're right. You're right in the sense that if by nature you have an outgoing personality, you're probably going to connect more. Like, that's scientific. Yeah. But connecting for connection's sake isn't necessarily what drives the needle or the ball down the field, right? Like, being selective about your connections and who you're going to connect to and the time you're going to spend with someone, I think is probably the most important. I think this is something
being strategic with your connections.
And I think this is something that if you're not an extroverted person, you could get over. I'm fine. I totally get it if you don't want to go out to a business meeting or a luncheon or a golf course and spend 8 hours shaking hands and kissing baby. Totally get it. But you got to at least be strategic about having some conversations with certain people and growing relationships,
or
because
being
you can't do it alone.
Or being strategic and getting a partner who is extroverted.
There you go. Or
so you
like
can
that.
just stand next to them and they'll do it, and then they'll be like, "Oh, this is Rio," and then you can jump in and you over that
Another great
that
option.
part that's challenging, right? I think it's really important to know where
You want
you're.
this?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
The color code personality profile is also known as the color code or the people code.
Oh, how original.
Color code. Never could have thought of that.
Devised by Taylor Hartman. That's
Man,
my
I'm
quick Google.
What is yellow? Can you tell us?
I'll look it up.
I'm so glad you told us the color code.
Jeez.
Okay, so while she's looking that up, what about for you in your life? Is how important is routine for you?
I wish it was more important. And here's why. I know it's important. I have a lot of routines on certain things and I'm very hinged on other things. Part of it is I travel a lot. And so holding a routine while you travel.
Because your environment's always different.
Always different hotel, different time you're checking in, different time you're checking out, different, and one of the things I run into now is that days are generally, you wake up, I've got all day meetings, and then you're going out to dinner with clients or with people or, and so it slips real quick, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
And then the reality is in this world, you're going out to dinner, you're having a nice dinner, so it's heavier, and then you're having some cocktails.
And dessert.
And then, right?
Yeah.
And so
Just
you
did
get
it
back and it's late and you just had like a very nice steak and a couple cocktails and maybe a little ice cream brownie situation,
Yeah, and you got that company credit card. It comes a little bit easier to
That's when I got fat, when I was traveling around and I had a company card. So it's like, you know what? I will do an appetizer and I'll also do the dessert. Almost for me, because like I didn't have a lot as a kid. So I feel like it was almost like I had the opportunity to finally get an appetizer. My dad would never let me get an appetizer unless we had like a free coupon.
You have like a little screw you dad in your
Yeah,
back of
so
your
it's
mind,
like, even though I'm not going to eat the whole thing, like give it to me.
One of the things that we didn't cover is I spent 5 years in Texas and down in the Houston area, and that's where you and I were.
Yeah.
The thing about Houston, now that I've mentioned like how much I love the outdoors and nature and all forms of it, like there's not a lot of that. It's all private property.
Yeah.
It's hot and it's humid. It's miserable.
Yeah,
and,
flat.
I similarly at the time was on a project where they were paying an unimaginable amount of money for me a day to eat. Literally, like I had like $100 a day stipend to eat food, and then I felt like the government. I felt like the federal government, where if I didn't eat it, like I was going to lose it.
It was wasteful. Like next year, they'd be like, "Okay, Rio, you have $60," and you're like, "No."
So I gained 65 pounds before I left. Yeah, dude, before I left, I tipped the scale. I tipped the scale at 270 when I left Houston.
Oh, I remember because we were watching UFC and the heavyweight fighters are 275, and you were like, I weigh as much as them, and we're like, no, you don't. And we went and got on the scale. And you weighed 270, and we're like, holy shit, you weigh the same as a heavyweight.
And then you look at a heavyweight, and you look at me, and I'm like, whoa, one thing is not like the other.
You do hold your weight incredibly well, though.
Well, thank you. But now I'm down to 220. So
Attaboy.
Yeah. Where was I going with this?
The food and
the food. Oh yeah, the food. So I don't know. Where was I can just eat it all day. So now routine.
It's hard when stuff is free.
Yeah. So now routine. What I did learn from that, my learning experience, is that you have to say no. Like you just when it's there, you just have to know when to say no. And the idea is just because let's talk about energy. Let's talk about just because a resource is available doesn't mean it needs to be used. And I think as Americans, we have this mentality worse than probably most countries, which if something exists, we have the right to use that.
Well, for me, like if I go to one of my jazz games in the box and there's all the desserts and the alcohol and it's all included, I feel like I have to partake because like I did pay for it. It's free now, but I paid for it. So I feel like.
And the worst part is you also know where does it go if you don't.
Yeah. Trash.
Yeah. And so it's
hard.
It's hard.
I have a really hard time saying no to free stuff. Free alcohol is like, that's a problem.
It's a problem for a lot of people.
It's like, oh, it's free? Yeah. I
free bottles.
I got to get away from that. Okay. So do you feel like there's anything else you want to touch on routine wise?
Nah.
Okay. So you read the book, Winning the Moment.
Yep.
So what was your biggest takeaway for you personally?
So the concept I think you touched on that I like a lot. And something that a buddy of mine up in Salt Lake, we were at Southern Utah together. He approached me about this idea of we should start. He read a paper, and the paper basically said if you commit to something and you sign your name to it, that you're something, I'm going to make up a number.
There's definitely math to that.
I'd say it's like 60%.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. More likely to carry that.
100%. There's some number that you're more likely.
And I like making up bigger numbers. So now it's 75%. So he comes and he says, hey, I'm going to start this little society in the college. And then he's like, I'm looking for someone to help me out. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Tyler Hoagie lives in Salt Lake. He's a great dude. And we started this organization called Society Committed to Integrity and Ethics. And the idea was we had a 1-page document that basically just outlined like being a good human, more or less.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to hold myself to high standards. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. And we just did it kind of as a basic,
almost like
pledge.
an honor code.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It's basically an honor code. But the difference was that you were pledging yourself voluntarily to it.
Yeah.
We're kind of doing a little bit of a science experiment, a little bit of not. But I think what it does is like make sure to outline the small victories and like the quick, easy ones, and start stepping them up. Of like, this is easy. Like, this is not a hard thing to sign your name to. That I'm just going to commit to this, and then you start. Because you made that decision, you start incrementally making a little bit better decisions, a little bit better decisions. I think in your book, you talk a lot about the small wins too, and how those small wins add up to big wins. And those are the type of the things, like in this case, we set ourselves up to have those small wins. And then in corporate America, that's one of the things that you talk a lot about too. It's right. It's like there's this idea that the bigger the company, the slower it moves. 100%.
That's why for example, Hilton's reservation system is so antiquated because they're so large that the sheer volume of changing it is almost at this point like
impossible.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
You almost have to just build a whole new system. Scrap that one. Just like, it's
big companies move slow.
Yes. So one of the challenges that you have in corporate America is that you surround yourself with great people. And you have to keep those people motivated, but motivation is usually driven by opportunity or opportunities that come from change, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're in a big company, those are very slow and they're very
few and
spread
far
out.
between.
Yeah. You have to really focus on the small victories. You have to provide an opportunity for people to provide reward for the piece that they're accomplishing.
The process of working towards the end goal.
I mean, if you're trying to build the Titanic, right?
Yeah.
And that's taking 10 years to construct.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing in every quarter to motivate your employee? Right? Like, those are the challenges.
Because you wake up on Monday and it's like, man, I'm not going to get a celebrate this accomplishment for 9 years. It's hard to be motivated to even want to do anything because like, what does it really matter?
I guarantee you won't be
And
motivated.
Also, it's like if I slouch today, it's irrelevant because I got 9 years, so I can have a couple of days off.
And that's the antithesis to the whole, Einstein's theory of time, right?
Yeah.
Once time's gone, the time's gone. So if your deadline's 9 years and you lose a day, you've lost a day. You can never make that day up. It's like revenue in business, right?
Yeah.
If you lose $1,000 today, it's not like you can make that $1,000 back up. The only thing you can do is make more the next day.
Yeah.
Right? You can never lose that
Can't
lost
use that
opportunity.
day's resources again.
Can't. Time's infinite, or time's not infinite. Time's futile.
So to bring it back, biggest takeaway is celebrating the small victories.
You got to celebrate small victories, and I think in especially the social media world, we see the big victories.
Yeah.
Right? I see, I signed this house, I signed this deal, I bought this, I did this. That's so rare. And
you don't see all the things they did to get to that point.
You don't see none of the things you did to get there. All you see is that big trophy that hangs at the end, and you've got to come up with some way of marching step by step every day.
Yeah. Okay, so last question. I think this is the most important question I ask, but how do you define success?
Just being happy.
Happiness?
Yeah, just happiness.
What makes you happy?
This, friends, family, nature. I mean, just and it's hard to, happiness sounds like it's not easy.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to be happy.
Yeah.
Like, you have to decide when to be happy.
And there's moments that you aren't happy. It's not like you're saying I have to be happy forever in perpetuity. I'm just striving for happiness.
I'm just striving for happiness, right? I'm just striving to wake up every day and enjoy my life, and to there's parts that go into that, right? You need to be happy. You have to have the resources you need to have it, right?
Yeah.
You can't. It's hard to be happy and be
if you're
poverty.
struggling. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's hard to be happy if you have broken relationships. It's hard to be happy if you're living alone. It's hard to be, there's a lot of things that are hard to be happy if you don't make the right decisions to be happy. And so, happiness, I think, is a vague term of like, I just want to be happy. It's like, no, you got to make the decisions to be happy. You know, I read a book early in my career that just said something easy. Like, if you wake up every morning and just decide that day is going to be good, statistically, it's like 30% better opportunity to have
And that's
better day.
really, I'm trying to use that psychology for winning the moment, right?
That's exactly
because
the
like
same.
if you wake up and you move a bracelet, you're already saying like, okay, I'm striving for something
Small
today.
victories.
Yep. And so then that first movement of the bracelet is spurring that confidence of like, today's going to be good.
And then by the time you get to that last bracelet, like you feel
then
so
you feel-
accomplished.
right.
You feel so,
It gives you a chance to feel, and because so often you go
genius.
through your day and you would just be like, today was like whatever. But now you're like, oh, today was great. I won 10 different times. Like I did this, that, and the other thing, and you're bringing yourself present to the decisions that you're making. So that's a great answer. Okay, that wraps it up. Unless there's anything that you want to share with the audience.
Do you want this yellow?
Oh yeah, tell me what I am.
Yellows are the life and soul of the party. They are sociable, expressive, very imaginative,
like
and
Cody.
enthusiastic.
I am probably
I think
yellow
you
too.
and I
That's
are
Rio
yellow.
to a T, though. What's amazing is that was Rio in 7th grade, which you're like, what, 12? And that's also Rio at 36. Cool note. Rio and I are only one day apart. His birthday is April 28th. Mine is April 29th.
Just one day better.
And if I would have been born on your birthday, my parents would have won $11 million. Did you know that?
Wow, you just started in debt. Is your dad hold it over to you?
Yeah, that's why we still play
Feels
28
so
on
pissed at you
roulette.
still.
Because they played the lotto in Phoenix. They got every single number. Last balls, swear to God. Last ball's rolling in, right? They've got every number. It's $11 million lottery. Last ball's rolling in. It's 2 something. 28. I was born on the 29th. Had I been born a day earlier, they would have won $11 million in the lottery. Wow. So to this day, I play 28 in roulette every single time.
28 is a good number.
It's a good number. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please subscribe and tune in, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.